So you've got people, you're set up, you want to be a GM, but where do you start? Last episode, we talked a little bit about just kind of like the mindset, how you want to be thinking as you're getting ready to prepare, how you want to be in contact with your players, how you want to be thinking about what you're going to be setting up, and how you're going to be moving forward from there. Just those like first few steps. But today we're really going to be talking about what you'll need, what kind of like preparations you can do, what kind of stuff you can get set up just to make your life a little easier as a GM. And all of this is, of course, is just like some tips from me, just some opinions that I have that are stuff that can make your life a little easier as you're beginning to start, stuff to keep in mind as you're beginning, so stuff to keep in mind as you like move forward in your campaign. And this stuff is just kind of like going to make you a little bit more prepared, a little bit more ready for what your players might run into, what you might expect, and even just hopefully help you prepare a little bit for this kind of stuff that you're going to be doing. I would imagine that if you're GMing, you probably came in as a player. Usually I feel like that's the pathway that it goes. I know some people might start as a GM, but usually you're a player, you start out, you play like maybe a couple campaigns, a couple games, and you're interested by it. So you check it out, you buy all these books, you get the stuff for it. And I think that the first key is really to just like know what you're getting into. So like you buy your GM guide for D&D, just read through it a couple times, go through it, kind of like make sure that you know what you're talking about. You obviously don't have to like memorize everything, but that's a big part of your job as a GM, is just to kind of like know those rules, keep them in the back of your mind just in case something weird comes up. You can look it up. You kind of know like that there is a rule for it, because sometimes there's stuff that's like vague that might not be in a rule book that you just kind of like have to make your own ruling on. But you can also make more informed rules from the stuff that's in your books. So say like you don't have a rule that fits exactly what you need to do, but you know something that's pretty similar. You're like, okay, then I can just apply this to this situation. It's similar enough. I can figure out like what kind of rules I want to use moving forward, and just keep it consistent too, because it's not going to be fun to play with if you're changing a bunch of rules around. So like obviously if something's unbalanced, totally like ruins everything, you don't want to keep using it. But if you're still figuring that thing out, maybe like give it a few tries, maybe just run it for the whole campaign. If you don't like it, you can cut it from the next campaign. But if it's not like ruining everything, maybe just keep rolling with it so that you're not switching it up on your players constantly. And so just kind of like study your rule books. You don't want it to be on fun, obviously. You don't want to sit down for like multiple hours on end unless you enjoy it, just to like sit down and read. And I think that's what makes GMing not for everybody too, is just that there's like so much that you need to know and memorize, or at least like understand at the very least, especially core mechanics in games, because like a lot of things will play off of that, like your D20 rolls, knowing just kind of like the numbers too. So like, what is like a hard success, like what makes it a little bit harder, what your number ranges should be, is pretty important as you're getting into it, especially because you don't want you to start off your players having to make these rolls that are basically impossible for them in order to do anything. So like balancing your numbers is a little bit important too. But the next thing I think that's really nice, as you're getting started, is to find some way to get maps for yourself. Obviously, if you play in Theater of the Mind, you won't really need maps. But even like location maps, even like region maps are just kind of nice to have as a guideline. It's making your life a little bit easier. You don't have to kind of like remember where everything is, or kind of have like this, you have this set solid guideline. And especially as you're getting into combat, a big part of my favorite part of D&D is the combat, how it works, how like strategic you can be, and having maps that are kind of like unique to play around is pretty fun. Obviously, you don't want to overwhelm people immediately, but as you get further into your campaign, if you're starting to work on maybe some more difficult boss fights or just some more difficult fights, I think a big key part of boss fights is the arena that they're in too. I think that it can totally change the dynamics of what you're doing. So find a way to get some maps. There's so many resources online. You can make your own. I used to a little bit on Incarnate. It's a lot of work, but if you enjoy it, then it's something that you totally can do. Something that I personally do, when I used to play in person a lot, I got myself one of these. I highly recommend these. It's a little like Expo dry erase map. So I could just kind of like make up these maps as I went on. So I have like a general idea, like I know I want this fight to have some kind of like massive pit in the center, some kind of high ground to kind of like give different level dynamics. And it's just kind of nice to have that kind of like preset notion, like that idea of what you're gonna do. So have some way to get maps, have some way to make your own maps once you decide that you're good enough at it, once you think that you're ready for it, obviously. Give yourself a little bit of experience first, because that's always going to feel a little bit nicer. And especially for like yourself and your players, it'll be just a little bit smoother moving into it. If you know like what maps should look like, what like makes a good map as you're starting to do it. But maps are good things to have. For region maps, I specifically would make sure just some like landmarks, honestly. You don't need everything. Obviously, you're going to probably explore things that aren't off the map at some point in time. So you want just like bigger landmarks and, you know, cardinal directions, obviously, your bigger cities. You don't have to have every single little town on the map, every single little event. But it's nice to just kind of like have something set up. And even if you don't like it, like want to make one, just find one. And you can kind of apply that where you want. You can apply like the general landscape. You can apply like the region to it. And that'll help you a little bit moving forward with your players. I think a big part of setting up initially is your first session. So as you're beginning, even like working on things, I think first session planning is really important. I always set up this. I don't do this for every session, but for first sessions for sure, I set up a beat sheet. First sessions are the most railroad you're going to get in your campaign, especially just because you're right off the rip. You have to set everything up as a GM. So your first session, have at least, I'd say, the first half of that session planned out. Usually my sessions run for an hour or for 3 hours. I have that first hour and a half planned out at the very least. And I have directions that we can go from there. But first sessions are important because you're kind of setting the tone for everyone. You're setting what's going to come. You're setting up the first beats in the story. So first sessions are very important to plan out. So have that just set up. You can set up your beat sheets in ways that you can understand. Maybe like you don't really want to like plan out a combat, but at the very least, maybe you have one that you can throw in just in case your players get there. Or at least if you don't have a combat, have some kind of enemies ready just to make, especially for sessions, there's a lot that you have to be thinking about, just to have that set up just in case you need it. But beat sheets are pretty important. I think that beat sheets you can also use for your overarching story, or at least arcs, story arcs. You could have like as a beat sheet too, like maybe I want this arc at some point in time, or I just have a list of arcs. I really like setting up lists of things that I want to do, lists of like potential magic items, lists of player stories, lists of just arcs that the entire party will go on. And that can just kind of like help you, you know, if you're maybe like behind on planning for a session, pull up my list, pull something off of it, and I can go ahead and plug that in so I'm ready for this next session, even if I wasn't quite prepared to plan. It doesn't have to be like, you can make it cohesive enough to fit into your story. If you're like really willing to do that, it takes maybe like 10-15 minutes to figure out how to plug something in, because you're kind of set up more. Sessions are more modular, so you can kind of like, if you're not picking up straight off of something, you can just kind of like plug something straight in if you have like a blank canvas for your start of your session. I think another thing that's pretty important to prepare before you start your campaign is lore docs. Lore docs are weird though, because lore docs are only as useful as you and your players can make them. So say you are playing with a party that you know probably won't read your 20-page lore doc. don't make them a 20-page lore doc. Maybe you can have a separate 20-page lore doc. But as you set up, usually my lore docs, when I'm sending them to my players, are typically faction lists, general overview. Usually I like to include like just a little bit of trivia too. It could be nice to kind of like set that tone. But if you're not in a specific setting, or if you're making your own setting, then it's nice to have a lore doc just to kind of like line everything up for everyone, even if, because they've all got their own backstories that they're worried about, you kind of just line them all up, set them up, again, help set up that first session prep so that everyone is on the same page about where they need to be whenever you start. That's also an important thing to include in your lore doc, is just kind of like what you want for the beginning of your campaign. And so you kind of just want to set yourself up for the most possible success that you can have. And you don't have to spend a ton of money to be a GM. Obviously, you'll need rule books and stuff, but that should be the priciest option for you. Again, I got my map thing here, I think was like 15, 20 bucks. And that was only because I decided I really wanted it, because I don't like preparing maps, because I like to really just put them in exactly where I want them. So if that's something that you're into, you can worry about that. If you like making maps and having maps prepped in advance, then you can kind of lead into combats, and you could be prepared for that. It's all really a stylistic thing. No one's going to GM the same way. No one's going to have the exact same story. So you kind of just, it's where that expression as a GM kind of comes in, is just kind of like how you are prepared, how you're set up, how you're ready to do things. And that's something that as you do it for longer and longer, you'll get a little bit better at it, you'll understand more, and eventually, you know, it starts rolling off. It just becomes natural. It's something that you can reach that like flow state for, I feel like. And once you do, you will recognize it. It's pretty nice to be in, and it's exciting once you understand what you're doing. It can be overwhelming at first, but if you think you're ready for it, then go for it. I think everyone should be a GM once they think they're ready for it, because it's just another layer of kind of that expertise about the game. It's another layer of like understanding. Like, I think a lot of good players have been GMs at one point. A lot of good GMs have been players at one point. Like I said, probably most of them. But like when you understand what your GM wants, you can be a better player. When you understand what your player wants, you can be a better GM. And that's literally what it's all about. So next episode, we are going to look a little bit into like real full world building. We'll get just like a little bit further into that. Maybe we'll start something. But I hope that this helped you guys out a little bit. I hope you guys take some of these to heart just a little bit. Again, these are all just tips and opinions. So if you don't like them, then you don't have to listen to them. It's just something that helps me a lot, and something that I hope can help you guys. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.